Okay. Okay, so there again is the agenda. We'll cover other materials, create an investment, add interest, do some withdrawals, and we'll take a brief look at reports. CTAS User's Manual, Chapter 16, State Auditor's Office. We'll look at statement of position letters that deal with investments. If you go to the Office of the State Auditor, osa.state.mn.us, you get a drop-down screen, their home screen. You go to Training and Guidance. You get a blue drop-down box. In that listing under Guidance is CTAS. You select that, and you'll get a long page of CTAS information. And if you scroll down a ways, there is a heading called Download the Full Manual. You can get the CTAS User's Manual in a PDF form there. You can download the entire thing at one time, or below that, if you continue to scroll down, you can download it by chapter. Continue on down. On that same blue screen, above the CTAS is statements of position letters. You select that item, and you get to a screen that looks something like this. Left-hand side are the titles of the statement of position letters. In the center is a category, deposits and investments. If you search for deposits and investments, you'll find there's a half a dozen items in that list. They're on page 2 and page 3 in that section. I'm not going to read those letters, but I'm going to cover a few important points in those. You can go back and download those or read those as you need to. I've got 5 of them listed here. We'll go through them just briefly. Custodial credit risk. This means that Minnesota statutes require that all of the public entities, that is the township's deposits, be protected by deposit insurance or a bond or pledged collateral. In addition to that, there should be a written policy risk by the township. And there are examples of those in the statement of position letters. Minnesota statutes also limit who can hold the township investments. Generally, it's banks. There's also a section for broker-dealers, as long as they have Securities Investors Protection Corporation, which is SIPC, or have other insurance coverage. The financial entity holding your securities must acknowledge that they are holding your securities and that you still own them. That's the custodial credit risk. The next one is legal restrictions on public investing. This statute says that you are limited as to where you can invest your money. Federal securities, state and local securities, transferable certificates of deposit, and money market mutual funds are on the list, but mutual funds are subject to the rating requirements. There are also a couple of large government investment pools, 4M Fund, the Liquid Asset Fund, the Magic Fund, and the MN Trust are places where townships and cities invest their money. Those plans or pools invest in securities that meet Minnesota state requirements. Then move from there on to the qualified safekeepers. Says some of the same things. It identifies a limited group of entities that may hold securities in safekeeping for townships. Again, it mentions the SIPC for insurance coverage. Then there's one on depositories and collateral. That one is the one that you reference in your reorg meeting, where you specify where your checking account, savings account, etc. will be. That determination must take place at a public meeting. Collateral Collateral is investments by the institution, the bank in most cases. They're going to invest the township's money in other securities, so they're not just in the bank's name. So if the bank fails, you actually own other securities out there to keep you whole. Let's see here. State law requires that the pledge of collateral be done through a written assignment from the bank to the township. And I've heard a couple of comments from township people that the bank didn't want to go through the process, although it's required, that the bank's loan committee or bank's board approve the assignment of collateral to the township. And the last statement of position I'm going to touch on is FDIC rules for government deposits. And it says that if the bank is located in the state of Minnesota, the township is eligible for two separate $250,000 FDIC coverages, one for all time, which would be like CDs that have a maturity date, and savings accounts, and another one for all demand accounts, which are checking accounts. So if you have money investments at a particular institution that are over the $250,000 limits, then the bank is to provide you collateral. That is, they will invest your money in outside securities. That pledged collateral must equal 110% or more of the uninsured deposit with them. That's what gives you security in case that bank fails, that there will be money there for you. Then we'll move from the associated items into closer to CTAS. This is a listing of collateral. This is a collateral report for the Township of Newmarket from the Newmarket Bank. And these are just the Newmarket, the Newmarket Township's collateral. So you can see in the list of names, Federal Home Loan Bank, Federal Home Loan Mortgage Corporation, Farmington, Minnesota Taxable General Obligation Bonds. There's some Sallie Mae items down there. You can see the dollar amounts and the rating for those items. So this is the kind of report you should be getting, or something similar to it, from the bank if you have more than $250,000 in either of those sections in investments. Now we'll move into actually creating an investment. This is a section of a CTAS screen. From the top row of tabs, you select investments. To the left, you'll get a gold investment icon, and you select that icon, and you'll move to this screen. You have two tabs now, a fourth of the way down in the screen, investments list and add investments. If you select add investments, you get the lower 2/3 of that screen. You notice there are three fields that are started with an asterisk and are in blue. These are the same throughout CTAS. If they're in blue with an asterisk, they must contain information before you can save it. Investment ID, you can put 10 characters in there. I strongly recommend you use 3 or 4 characters from the account number from your bank or savings institution, so it's easy to tie the bank statement to the investment. The type of investment could be CD, money market, whatever else you may have, standard savings. Description, you can get about 50 characters in the description. I suggest you put the bank name in there. And if this particular investment is dedicated to a particular purpose, some townships have a building fund, some have a piece of road equipment that they're saving in a particular investment for. You put that information in description. That information will be carried forward into other places where the investment is shown and into the reports. You can see to the right side in black is maturity date and interest rate, and we will get into those later. Let's see here. So I've selected add investments and I've started to put in some information. You see, I've just created a dummy investment ID. I just put in money market savings CD. Description, bank one, our need one. When you move down to the deposit section, you see the little blue tab with the down arrow on it. Click that with your cursor or hover over it, and you will get a drop down that shows the funds that you have already set up in your CTAS program. So you don't have to enter it manually. You can select one of those funds. If you type in a fund number, it must be one of the ones that are in the drop-down box. Then put in your transaction date and your transaction amount. This shows a larger portion of the screen. You can see I have 100 general fund, transaction date of March 2nd, deposit of $10,000. When you press the enter or the tab key, it'll update the current value near the bottom. You then will select save. You now have an investment. I'm going to jump out of investments for a minute. And if you go to reports, financial reports, schedule 1, this is the schedule 1, and I've got a red arrow over the investment balance. It now shows there's $10,000 in investments. You can see that it got there through the purchase of investments. And I have a negative $10,000 in my ending balance. That's because I started with 0 as a beginning balance. But CTAS assumes that money going into an investment is coming out of checking. I pause there because that is part of the CTAS program. It assumes if you're putting money into an investment, you already have it in your checking account. We'll cover some other ways that that gets handled as we get later into the presentation. Now, out of investments, into the tab Accounting, select the icon for disbursements. Disbursements list. There is now a new disbursement in our list. It's highlighted in blue, the check date, and it now has a check number of IAD2. That's investment automatic deposit. So when you put the money into deposit in investments, it will create a disbursement out of checking. So if you're making that deposit and it truly is coming out of checking, you went online to the bank or you walked over and talked to the bank and you moved money from your checking account to your savings account, you did that physically there, and now in CTAS, it does it automatically when you create the investment. You can also see that under the vendor name and description, it has carried forward information that you put in for that investment. Scanning to the right a little farther, there's the check total, $10,000. The things that you normally see with disbursements, a column for void and a column for cleared. And you'll see that both of those are no's at this point. So here's looking at the detail that was highlighted. So I go down and view and edit. I get to this screen and it shows this is the deposit that was created by the investment item, fund number 100, account number 49350 is purchase of investments. Object code 800 investments purchased. We commonly talk about moving money from checking to savings. If you think of savings could be stock, then the title purchase of investments make more sense. You're purchasing an investment. You could be purchasing a CD. You could be purchasing stock. CTAS calls it a purchase of investments. Now I've moved to accounting and cash. This is a common place to go when you're doing your month end, because you're looking for deposits in transit and outstanding checks. So do the same thing here, going to that same screen. To the far right, you have outstanding checks. Here's a familiar screen. That check or disbursement shows up on the left-hand side of this screen. You will, just as you do with checks, move it to the right-hand side of the screen and then save it and close it. Now you've noticed that the columns on some of my screens, like here with the amounts, do not show the entire part of the information. That's because of my computer. I'm working on a Surface tablet, so my screen is small, so it makes all those columns skinny. If you have, I think, between a 17 and 19-inch monitor, you'll start to get the full width of the columns to show. Remember, we took that outstanding deposit from the left column to the right column. We saved it and then closed that screen. Now we come back to accounting disbursements list. And if you look across towards the right-hand side, the cleared column is now yes. That's same as if you were clearing checks that have passed through the bank. It is now cleared. So we covered checking to investment at the same bank. Now we'll move to new money being received. So if you're receiving money, it could be your property tax statement, or many other things that you want to then move to an investment or create an investment. You need to receipt the money first. Make out that 3-part paper receipt. Go into CTAS, make your receipt in CTAS, and then go to investments and create the investments. At the same time, you're going to the bank to put that money into the savings account or buy a CD with it at the bank. So you're running parallel process, the physical part with the bank and the CTAS portion. You're putting the money into checking. Now you're going to put money in checking and you're going to take it to savings at another bank. You deal with bank one for your checking and some of your savings, but bank two down the street has got a better deal on savings rates. So you want to put money in bank two. So if you got the money in your checking account in bank one and you want to get it down to bank two, do a normal process in CTAS of creating a claim and take it to disbursements and print a check to bank two. You can then mail that down to bank two or hand carry it down to bank two. Then you go into investments in CTAS and create that investment. Now remember, we talked about the deposit into the investment is going to automatically create an IAD, an investment automatic deposit. You've already done one disbursement, and that's when you went through the claim process. You do not want that second disbursement in there, so you're going to delete that IAD. So in the accounting disbursements list, you're going to highlight that entry, that disbursement with the IAD number on it, and press delete key. And you're going to get a confirm deletion box. And if you're using something smaller than a 19-inch screen, you may notice that the box doesn't appear to have all the text in it. If you read that top line, are you sure you want to delete the? Sounds like there should be more text after that. Well, there should be. A number of people have gotten caught on this and simply went yes. You end up with problems. If you put your cursor up on the right-hand edge of that box, you'll get a double arrow. Click and hold it and drag it out to the right. You will then see the complete text in the box. Are you sure you want to delete the one selected item? Also, the list below shows associated investment deposits that will also be deleted. If you would like to prevent this from occurring, please uncheck the box below. So you want to uncheck this box like that. Simply click on the box. If that box gets saved, you go yes, it'll not only take out the AAD, it'll actually take out the deposit over in the investment side. You need to clear this X and then say yes. Now for taking new money to the savings at Bank 2, first you need to receipt that new money into your checking account, which is at Bank 1. Then you go through your claim disbursement process to create that check that you can take down to Bank 2. And then in CTAS, you create that investment. And then again, you've already done the claim disbursement process once. You don't want to take it out a second time, so you have to delete that investment automatic deposit. Now we get to one that's been a problem for a number of townships, and that is how to record an existing savings or CD. You've been using CTAS for some period of time, but you have CDs or savings accounts that have never been put into CTAS. You go into CTAS and create the investment, as we already done. You know it's going to create an IAD, but the money was not in the checking account to begin with. It was already in the savings or CD. So you need to delete that IAD. And it'll show up in investments like it should, but it won't throw your checking account off. Now we'll get into interest. You receive interest on an investment, and it's actually added to the investment. You get a bank statement every month that shows your savings account, and you keep comparing that against CTAS. Things are good, and now they add interest to it, and it shows on that bank statement that they added the interest to that savings account. We'll go into investments. You highlight the investment that you want to work with. You're going to edit it. The investment will appear and the deposit section will appear. And in this case, you can see my initial deposit of the $10,000. I then create a second line right underneath that, 100 general fund, transaction date, and I plugged in $13 of interest on it. When you hit your tab or enter key, down below, you'll see the current value update from the $10,000 of initial deposit to the $10,013 with the interest on it. This shows the disbursement list. It shows an IAD in there now for the $13. It's showing it came out of the checking account. Remember, that's fresh income to you, so you have to create a receipt for that. You receipt it into checking, and then when you make your deposit into the investment, it takes it out of checking and puts it in the investment so that your checking account stays in balance. Description, interest earned, usually put the month in there. I will oftentimes also put the part of the bank number, the same part that I used over in the description or the investment ID. Another situation if we receive interest on an investment, but it's paid to you, not added to the investment by the bank. Sometimes the arrangement is that you'll continue to get individual statements on your savings account, but the bank, instead of putting the interest into the savings account, they'll put it into your checking account. You simply receipt the money into your checking account. You don't have to go to investments because it doesn't show up in the investment account. Accrued interest. Back on the investment screen, there's a place to the right for maturity date, interest rate, and accrued interest. You can enter a maturity date. May be important for the board to keep track of that and the treasurer to keep track of that. CTAS does nothing with the maturity date except to show it on reports. You can put in the interest rate. Again, that's in black, so it's not required. If you put it in there, CTAS does not use it to calculate anything, but it does show up on your reports that list interest. They give you more information and will show the interest rate. Below that is a table where you can put in accrued interest. CDs may accrue interest. You have a given interest rate on it, 1%, 2%, and the bank says that's how much interest you're going to be paid on a monthly, quarterly, annual basis. You can keep track of that here if you'd like to. You just need to remember that that is not your money yet until, if it's being applied to the CD, it's not your money until you redeem the CD. So that's why it's called accrued interest. It doesn't show up in checking. It's not money you can spend. Accrued interest will show up on the reports. Now we're going to take a look at withdrawals. If you look at the investment page, after you've opened an investment, you see the deposits that we put in there, $10,000 to create the initial investment and $13 in interest. Towards the bottom of withdrawals. Screen looks very similar to deposits. We're going to create a withdrawal, General Fund 100, transaction date, and a transaction amount. I want to touch on fund number just a minute here. You should only withdraw money with the same fund number that you put the money into the investment with. If the money came out of your general fund, as an example, you would put that into an investment under Fund 100. When you withdraw it using Fund 100. You can have multiple funds of money in one investment. You could have a $100,000 investment with $50,000 from general fund, $30,000 from road and bridge, and $20,000 from fire. So your initial deposit would have each of those three fund numbers and the appropriate dollar amounts with it. When you go to withdraw the money, you want to use those same fund numbers. Then the dollars will come out of your investment and go into your checking account with those fund numbers on it. The bottom right-hand side, you see the current value. That was the initial $10,000 plus the $13 interest. I put in my $50 withdrawal. I save that. You see my current value now changed to $9,963. It was the $10,013 minus the $50. Now, when we talked about deposits, we noted that CTAS assumes the money is going out of checking into that investment. The opposite is true here with withdrawal. CTAS assumes that when that money comes out of investments, it goes into your checking account. So it makes an automated receipt, an investment automatic withdrawal. Remitter description or from your descriptions for the investment, and then it shows the amount in here. Again, void and cleared show up in columns like they do for other receipts. Just like we did for the disbursements, we need to go to accounting, cash, and look at the cash processing boxes way over to the right, deposits and transfer, outstanding checks. Before we had an outstanding check we had to handle. Now we have an outstanding deposit, a deposit in transit. It shows up on that familiar two-sided screen here. It shows up on the left-hand side. You move it to the right-hand side and do a save and a close. And if we go back to accounting receipts, when you look across on their receipt, the cleared is now yes, just like it would be on any receipt after you've noted that it's passed through the bank. So we covered the savings to checking at the same bank. Now it's from savings at bank 2 to checking at bank 1. You actually got paid the interest. We're going to make a withdrawal, pardon me. Make a withdrawal from the savings at bank 2, and you're going to put it in your checking at bank 1. So you're going to get a check from bank 2, you bring it to bank 1, you go through the window there, get it deposited. Now in CTAS, you have to receipt that money. Use a standard 3-part paper receipt. When you go into the investment that you have at bank 2 and you create the withdrawal and investments, you're going to get an automatic investment, automatic withdrawal in receipts because it's assuming that money is going into your account there. I just messed up here. Checking at bank 1. So then you need to delete that withdrawal because you're going to receipt it on a separate paper receipt. So you're going to delete that automatic one from CTAS. Other things to think about when you're handling the investments. When you're cashing out or redeeming a CD, it's at maturity, you may not have the last interest payment already entered. It may not have shown up on anything. So the payout, the check you get for that CD may be more than what you already had in the investment screen. So you have to enter that difference into the investment screen as an interest deposit to get the total of the investment up to the amount of the check you received. The other side of that is you may be cashing a CD early and there may be a penalty. So you may have already recorded interest all the way to the end for your CD, and now the bank has withheld money as a penalty. So you go into your investment, and this was our investment as it is when we started to do this final withdrawal. And there in the second line of the withdrawal, General Fund 100, the date, and we have to take out the entire current value of the investment. Regardless of the amount of the check we get from the bank, we have to take out the total amount that was in the investment. Hit enter, it sets the current value to 0. Now we go to accounting receipts. There's our new withdrawal, IAW3 for $9,963. That was the full amount that we showed in our investment. But we didn't get that much from the bank because there was a penalty on it. So we will highlight and open up that receipt, IAW3, and it will be populated in the total section with the total amount of the current value of the investment that we just did a withdrawal on. And it would show 100 general fund, 39990, the sale of an investment, and the $9,963 that was the current value of the investment. You now go into the total and make the total what the check actually was that you received from the bank. In this case, $9,863. So if you had put $98.63 up there, you've got $99.63 down in the account distribution, you're going to have a difference of $100. So you create a second line in your account distribution, the same fund, same account number, and you put in a negative $100 to show that penalty. This is one of the few places you can actually put a negative number in the CTAS. I would then go up to description, and I would enter into the description. Now, what's there now is the automatic part. I would add to that a note about the $100 penalty. You can see here the far column to the right in the account distribution has information about the investment. And again, is information from the description and ID from the investment section. Here's a close-up showing the amount, the 99.63, the negative 100, and the investment information. Again, that is a receipt or a deposit. We need to go back to accounting cash. It shows up on the left-hand side under deposits in transit. You need to move it to the right-hand side and then save and close. That's the activities: creating an investment, recording interest, recording some withdrawals. We've talked about the accrued interest. We'll now take a brief look at the reports. Current investment report. Current investments shows the investment ID, the investment type, information taken right off what you put in on the investment page. Shows the interest rate, maturity date, that would be from information that you entered back on that investment sheet, and the current value for that date. Now we'll go to current investments with accrued interest. Shows the same information, only adds in accrued interest. Now I added some accrued interest on this one for an example, $11, but it doesn't break out how much the accrued interest is. It shows it in the total, but doesn't itemize it. Schedule 8, investment activity, has some similar information, a little difference beginning balance, deposits, withdrawals, gives you the ending balance. Again, that's schedule, because I don't have it. Schedule 8, you can get it with accrued interest on it as well. Special fund numbers and account numbers. You've already seen an example of special account numbers for the purchase of investments and the sale of investments. Townships will borrow or bond to acquire funds to do a significant project like a road rebuild. This money is often put into an investment until it's needed to pay for the construction costs. A separate fund and fund number is recommended for the proceeds of the bond. Now, we suggest doing something similar to this for the ARPA funds. You create a separate fund for it. But here we're talking about the bond in particular. In your chart of accounts, there's a series of 400 numbers in the fund section under capital project funds. If you're getting money from a bond, you can use general capital projects, the 401 fund if you'd like, or you can create 406 or 407. In CTAS, you would create that fund and your bond proceeds would go into that fund. You would then use the money in that fund to pay your construction costs. Similarly, there is a set of account codes, proceeds for general long-term debt. So if you have general obligation bonds, which is what most townships will use, you have an account code 39310. Sometimes there are premiums on bonds sold. You're selling $1.5 million worth of bonds and you actually recover $1.6 million. That extra $100,000 gets booked under premiums on bonds sold into the same fund. When you're receiving money from the bond sale, you're going to create an investment. You receipt the money into CTAS. Again, that's assuming now that CTAS assumes that money is coming into checking. You then create an investment in CTAS. You make the deposit into the investment with the new fund number. You have to be sure to handle that IAD entry properly. What are you doing with that money? Did that money go straight from the bonding company into an account at the bank and therefore didn't really flow through your checking account. If it actually came into your checking account and then you moved it to a savings account or a CD, then you're going to need that IAD entry to keep your books balanced. And that's the end of the presentation. So, Kristen, let's see what we've got here. I've got 3 in Q&A.
Yep, and then there's been a lot in the chat, and 2 people have their hands raised if they want to speak a question.
Okay, let's see what we have. Any interest should be placed on the accrued side and not under the original left side. I'm on. Interest should only be placed on the right side under accrued if it's truly accrued and it's not available for you to spend. I'm assuming our township isn't the only one that doesn't use CTAS. It would be possible to do a training that doesn't revolve around CTAS. I will make a note of that. Yes. It'll take me a little time to put that together because I have not done that using the ledger sheets, but I will do that. And when I get that put together, notice will go out that will be available. And after I've said that, I would encourage you to get on CTAS. It is a great way to use some of your ARPA funds, and it makes your report to the state very easy. As Mark Alboreto showed yesterday, it's a click of a button in CTAS and your state report is compiled and sent. Let's see, how do we pay into unemployment insurance? I do not have an answer on that. I don't think that as a government entity, we're paying into unemployment insurance. I think if we did, that the CTAS program would have that built into the payroll module. That would be a question for Mark Alboreto at the Office of the State Auditor. Do I go back and re-enter all interest on the accrued side or just start from this and forward? I'm going to assume at this point your books haven't balanced with the bank or with your savings statement. If they do, then there's a deeper problem and you're going to have to call a trainer and look at it and work through that. Township needs to create an investment fund to put loan money into for a road project. Why would it not just go into the road fund? The road fund is a listing down the left-hand side of your reports. If you go across the report, on the Schedule 1 in particular, there's a column called the ending balance. That's your checkbook balance. There's another column called investment balance. So the road fund is a way of classifying the money, and the investment is actually a pot that you're putting the physical money into. So you would put it under road and bridge fund, and that would be the fund number that you would use when you create the investment. Creating an investment moves the pot of money out of the checking account and puts it into a savings account or a CD. Let's see here. Are there CTAS 101 classes anywhere for my deputy clerk? There are none scheduled right now, but Lori and I are working on that. And we hope to have some classes put together and scheduled here shortly. Our primary emphasis would be to have people come to St. Michael probably. But if there's enough interest in an area of the state, we will certainly make a road trip and do both CTAS and clerk and treasurer training. How should we book interest? If it accrues at month end, yet doesn't show up until the 5th of the next month online, should we enter as the 30th or the 5th? If your bank statement is a calendar month statement, then the statement that I receive in March is for my February interest. So I would put that as the last day in February. If your bank statements are not calendar month, they generally occur on the 5th or the 7th or the 15th. That presents some problems in you trying to do calendar month reports for the board. We don't have a position on it, or I haven't found a position on it yet. It does make it difficult. I suggest the first thing you do is talk to the bank and see if you can get on a calendar month basis. CTAS is a great program. Yes, there's a lot to learn. When not in person, we don't understand. The reports we can get from CTAS are a benefit in the program, figures of taxes, pair, etc. The price is inexpensive and worth the price. Mark gave the website or link on Monday where to go to do this manually. Do this, and I'm not sure what they mean by this, if it's the year-end report or if it's something else in CTAS. Call a trainer and we can help you figure that out.
Wonder if we want Lois to unmute and ask a question, or Dawn.
Yeah, go ahead.
Or Lori Koski. You can unmute now and ask your question. And then there's some more questions in the chat that I'm sure David and Lori Stalker can go back and look at. But if anyone who had their hand raised now wants to unmute, got a couple minutes here. Or David, you can go back to the Q&A if you want to continue with that.
If nobody's speaking up.
Oh, Lori, go ahead. Lori Koski. Oh no, back off mute. Sorry, go ahead.
The balances of investments have balanced to date, even with the interest added in the left side instead of the accrued side. Not sure if I would need to backtrack. Call a trainer so we can talk it through. We would probably like to see a scan of your cash control and your Schedule 1. In many cases, when I'm working with somebody on something like this, I will ask for you to do a backup and send me a copy of your backup. There's 2 files in that. That way we can look at exactly the same thing that you're looking at and work you through that. Let's see here, not using CTAS. Currently, we use funds and a separate Excel spreadsheet to balance out between cash control and bank statements. It sounds like it may be easier to start using the investment module, but not sure where to start. Jessica, contact one of the MAT trainers and we can work you through that. It is definitely easier to do it in CTAS once you get it set up than to use a separate spreadsheet. It also makes reporting for the board and your report to the state easier. What are the advantages of using CTAS? I think the last 3 days you've heard many of them. The software is $300, a one-time payment for as many copies as your township needs. You contact the Office of the State Auditor. You need a SAFES username and password. Then you go in through SAFES and you can download the CTAS software. You could load that onto the clerk's PC, the treasurer's PC, the deputy clerk's PC, the deputy treasurer's PC. They each run independently. This is not a network program. So what the deputy treasurer does on their machine stays on the deputy treasurer's machine. What the clerk does on their machine stays on the clerk's machine. And then each month you have to compare the results, the reports from each of the machines to see that everybody's doing things with the same coding. I think that answered that. Does there have to be a board approval to transfer between checking and savings? That is the recommended way to do it, and that is on advice from the MAT attorneys, that moving between checking and savings and moving between funds even. If you're short on road and bridge and you want to move money from the general fund to road and bridge to finish snow plowing or replace culverts, that you have board approval on that. That provides, one, that the board knows what's taking place, and two, it puts it in the minutes that the treasurer and or clerk are not just moving money around in an effort to hide things someplace. Let's see here. Regarding CTAS coding setup, since there are two of us and the codes were chosen by prior treasurers and clerk, does it matter if our monthly codes do not match? If the amount in vendor matches, is this a big deal? It's not a big deal, but we do recommend that you put your heads together and come down to one set of codes that everybody's using there. Clerk, treasurer, and the deputies. It's not difficult to change codes. I suggest that at this point, we're in the middle of March, that you go back to January 1st of this year and start using common codes. If you download the chart of accounts from the Office of the State Auditor's website, you can then have multiple copies of that and kind of write notes right on it. If you have created a code or an account code or object code for grading, mark that as grading, or write it to the side so that you're both using the same code. Okay, let's see here. Then let me go and click over here. Let's see. When I first started, I was afraid of CTAS. It makes everything so much easier. Where is a list of trainers? Look at the MAT website, contacts, and scroll down. You got to get past Jeff and through the regular employees and get down to the trainers. Let's see here. We'll scroll my way back up through these. We also do not use CTAS to deeply appreciate the training with ledgers. We manually figure tax. We are a small township, so this isn't difficult. Getting a loan to do a road project. So we have to create an investment for those monies instead of putting in a road fund. Again, road fund is a line item to describe what you're going to use the money for, what it's dedicated for. That's different than having it in either checking or the savings. That is a hard one to get over. A lot of people stumble on that between funds and investment and checking. Do you have to manually figure your tax information for your payroll? CTAS will calculate PARA, Medicare, FICA, and federal and state income tax withholdings. Let's see here. We use CTAS to write our own checks, and payroll information is done in Excel. I strongly suggest you make a kind of a cutoff date and move things over to CTAS. It does make things easier. You can still write your own checks. A number of townships do. But if you go through the claims disbursement process, CTAS will print your checks. If you use funds, they will show up on your cash control statement, and your total for the bank statement will not match. They should match if you're doing things per the regular format and process in CTAS. They will match. cash control will match. And comment about the board, statements to the board or reports for the board. Yes, various boards would like to see various reports. The reports you provide may change over time as their faces change. Some boards want to see accrued interest as an example. Some boards don't care. My last updated training manual received a training is from 2016. Do I receive another? Is just one just as good? Download the new CTAS manual. I don't know how much different it is. It's free to download it. Using something else. Let's see. Some townships will put them in separate funds instead of using the investment module. And that there's a number of townships that do that. And then they start trying to use the investment module and they have problems. I've worked with a number of them with that. It would be helpful if we were given the slides before the meeting, then they could take notes on the slides. Something will pass along. Okay. Looks like that's most of what's left here. Would the investment be a good place to keep track of the ARPA money? The ARPA money you could leave in your checking account or put in the investment package if you put it into a savings account. We do recommend creating a separate fund for the ARPA. That would show up on the left-hand side, and as you move from left to right across on your ARPA line, then your Schedule 1 would show how much of the ARPA money is in your checking account and how much is in an investment account. Aren't you FDIC insured for $250,000 per signer on the account? No, that is not correct. The $250,000 is per account, not per signer. Are credit unions included in banks? Most credit unions are part of a federal insurance program for credit unions. You need to check with them and see if they qualify. Let's see here. I think that's, I'm still scrolling through some here, but okay, that's, looks like it covers everything that's in the CTAS stuff.
Back in the Q&A, there's a few more if you want to keep spending time on this, unless Lori wants to move on.
We have, actually, Steve is supposed to be on at 9:45, so we can, we can move on. If you didn't get your question answered, if you'd email one of us with your question and we will get that answer to you.
Does the bank does not post the interest for the month until the 5th of the following month? The question is then, what they post at the 5th of the following month is on the following month's bank statement? If it is, that's when it's available to you, and that's when you would receipt it. February interest is listed on our bank statement on March 5th. I would call that February interest. I don't get the bank statement until after that date. Most banks now, you can go online and get your bank report. So you could do it generally after like 6 o'clock on the last business day of the month. That speeds the process up. I created a program code to track ARPA monies and did not assign a fund. Is this sufficient? It's sufficient. You can do it that way. That's not our recommendation, but it works. I think I've got to the bottom now. Does the clerk and treasurer both have to keep track of investments in CDs? I would not use the word have to, but it is highly recommended they both, so that at the end of the month, when you're comparing cash control statements, schedule ones, and other reports, you match number for number, column by column, row by row.
All right. Thank you, David.
You're welcome.